Hey folks, David Stewart here. So, the other week, my sister-in-law was walking her dog, and she was also walking her son, and her son's about 20 months old. And my brother-in-law, I don't think he was with him the whole time. I was talking to him on the phone when this happened, but she's walking her dog, and she has her dog on a leash. Out comes this other couple, and their dog is not on a leash while they're walking their dog. And those of you who are good at predicting events can possibly predict what happened next. The dog that was not on a leash attacked my sister-in-law's dog and hurt my sister-in-law's dog really bad. And this is right in front of her baby, right in front of a less than 2-year-old child. And if you are a parent, that is a really, really horrific and terrifying kind of experience to have to go through, is to have your dog or have any kind of animal attack right next to a baby, because your thinking process, and luckily I believe her son was in a stroller, thank God, in a stroller, because the next thought is, what if that was my child, right? And it'd be even worse than the dog. This couple, obviously they expected their dog to have a certain set of behaviors while they were on the walk, that the dog was going to stay by them and walk with them and obviously not attack other creatures. But the dog, there was something inside of it, some kind of instinct made it go and attack my sister-in-law's dog. The owners were very shocked. They felt really bad. They paid for the vet bills, I think, which were sizable, because my sister-in-law's dog had to have surgery. It was a really big deal and it really sucked for that dog. But why were they so surprised, and why didn't they have the dog on the leash? I never walk any dog without a leash, for this reason, is that animals are not people. And if you make the mistake of trying to predict animal behavior the way that you predict human behavior, you are inviting tragedy. It's kind of like people who think that they can ride a horse without like a bit and bridle or without spurs or something like that. And you meet people like that every once in a while. Horses get scared at things that you may not predict well, unless you're really intimately familiar with that horse, and then they may still surprise you because that horse is not a person. And I'm talking about this because of a point I kind of made in passing on a review and analysis video I did yesterday on the movie Ferdinand, which is about anthropomorphizing animals and using anthropomorphic animals in regards to certain topics. I think is manipulative and a little bit shady. And the topics that they were doing in Ferdinand were both bullfighting and, more importantly to me, slaughtering, the meat industry. And the reason that you don't want to have anthropomorphic animals with those sorts of situations is because you're essentially turning an animal into a person. You're combining reality and fantasy in a way that's going to be confusing to a child and is going to bypass any kind of reasoning or teaching that you can do to help them understand the nature of livestock or something like that, depending on what lesson you want them to learn, including a lesson if you don't want them to eat meat or you want them to view animal rights maybe differently from I do. You don't want an extra level of emotional manipulation that's designed to kind of bypass that and affect somebody directly. You can think of, like, I remember there's the Simpson episodes from the 90s where Lisa becomes a vegetarian, and she has this vision of these cows saying, like, "You won't eat my meat, but you glue with my feet," which cows do not talk to you. Impressing language upon on an animal is something that's far beyond the capacity of the animal. But as soon as we put language onto an animal, we are essentially making it into a human. We're giving it all the characteristics of a person that our theory of mind, which is something that children develop over time, our theory of mind starts to predict their behavior as human. And I think that's probably the mistake a lot of people make when they don't have their dog on a leash. And I've had dogs that are off a leash attack my dog or try to attack me. People are always surprised at it. Well, that dog is not a human, right? And so when you're applying a theory of mind to an animal, it's going to be erroneous. You're not going to accurately predict animal behavior by thinking of it as a person. Now, anthropomorphic animals, I actually have no problem with them in general. I think that they're fine for kids. Kids identify with animals. They like animals. They're cute. And we tend to like the animals that are most in appearance to humans. That is mammals. So we like rabbits because rabbits have eyes and they have ears and they have mouths, and we like cats. Cats look at us. Dogs look at us, and so that's a very human kind of interface. There is that visual experience. We don't tend to apply a theory of mind or anthropomorphize tarantulas or spiders or cuttlefish, even though cuttlefish are very intelligent, as are octopi. Actually, octopuses, that's the correct plural. They're both very, very intelligent, but we tend to not think of them as having human thoughts or human emotions because we don't have a very recognizable face for us to kind of interface with. So anthropomorphic animals also, they go way back in time to antiquity. They're in all kinds of different cultures. They exist in Aesop's fables. There's nothing inherently bad about anthropomorphic animals depending on what you're doing with them. I just think it's a little bit manipulative to have Guapo the bull be sent away to the meat packing place, and it's like, Daddy, where's Guapo going? Well, he's going to the slaughterhouse to be turned into hamburgers. I don't want to eat hamburgers anymore. I like Guapo. I don't want to eat Guapo, right? It's like, well, Guapo the cow doesn't exist. That's Guapo the cow is fantasy. Guapo the bull is just a fantastical creature. There's no talking cattle. And even deeper, if you start thinking about the theory of mind and the way sometimes people apply it to animals, and lots of people do this with their pets. They're like, oh, my cat likes or doesn't like this, and you can kind of figure out some rudimentary sort of preferences or thoughts that like an animal would have, but an animal doesn't have language. So the evidence for what an animal's thoughts are is extremely sparse at best. I can tell you what I'm thinking, and you have this interface called language where you hear the words, they have a meaning that you can assemble, and then you can be like, oh, this person thinks this. And like I said, the theory of mind is something you develop through interacting with people, and indeed, when you watch stories, you develop a theory of mind because you're watching people interact. Even if they're anthropomorphized animals, that's essentially people. There's actually a lot of good situations where anthropomorphized animals can be a real benefit to a story. If you have like rabbits living in a rabbit hole, like, I don't know, the tale of Peter Rabbit, Beatrix Potter kind of focuses on animals. When you start to think about how a rabbit would view the world, that helps you predict some of the behavior of rabbits in a certain sense. And it also reinforces an important aspect of the theory of mind, which is other people have thoughts which are different from yours and perspectives which are different from yours. And that's part of a really important kind of empathy response. So when you use an anthropomorphic, a person laid on top of the image of an animal to evoke a sense of empathy and then use it to preach about a particular thing, you're short-circuiting any kind of reasonable discussion that you can have and just sort of going straight to the emotion and avoiding that. And the thing is that I think when you're going to talk about animal rights, you need to talk about animal rights on the level of animals. Animals have diminished rights, they have diminished responsibilities because they have diminished capacity to reason, significantly diminished. I think it's a mistake to think that people were commenting on this, like, bulls are naturally gentle and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know how many bulls you've seen in your life, but I grew up around agriculture, and everybody gave bulls a wide berth. There's a reason bull riding is like a dangerous little event, and that you can completely disagree with bullfighting or bull riding and think that they're cruel and think that the pain of that animal matters and all that kind of stuff. But you can also still recognize that cow does not have the same relationship to thoughts and feelings that you have. In the case of this dog in this example I gave, the dog was reacting to something instinctual inside it that went past any kind of behavior conditioning the owners might have done, and it acted unpredictably. So I would never walk a dog without a leash, and I would probably never get on a horse without a bit and bridle, because that's an animal and you need to be able to control it in the event that it acts in a way that is not human, that is not easily predictable by you, or in a circumstance that you can't control. When a human enters a circumstance that's new, they can easily construct a lot of theories to control their behavior. And the theory of mind, where you think about how another person's going to feel about something, helps you predict all of their behavior. But animals have a different set of predictive behaviors, and so you have to keep that in mind. Animals are not people. And really my big point is you don't want to use anthropomorphized animals to preach too heavily to children, because they will start to identify a person with the animal, which is not appropriate or realistic in sort of any fashion. I still think it could be fun. I'm reminded of like Bugs Bunny sort of turning on Elmer Fudd and getting very mad when Elmer Fudd says that he only hunts rabbits for sport and he doesn't intend to eat bugs. This like offends bugs. As an adult, I can find that stuff kind of funny. As a kid, that could actually be kind of confusing. So if you watch those kinds of things with your kids, try to stop and talk about it and be like, real bunnies don't think this way, things like that. I think that's all pretty important for helping a child develop good sociological connections when they view stories. And I think stories are a great way to reinforce important social messages or just help a child to socialize. I'm very pro stories, whether you're reading them or we give our child limited screen time, but reading stories is really good because then you can stop and talk about it. Like my kid today, we watched like 15 minutes of a Sesame Street about Cookie Monster wanting these cookies, and there's like a cookie thief that keeps stealing the cookies, and everyone's blaming Cookie Monster. My son, he's 2, he's like, Cookie Monster felt bad because, he didn't get any cookies, and people were blaming him for eating cookies that he didn't eat. And so he felt like really bad about that. And he was experiencing injustice, which is a concept that was exhibited through this little drama. So, but Cookie Monster is not real either, right? We have to kind of imagine a theory of mind that we put upon Cookie Monster. Why does he feel this way? What's causing him to feel this way? How could I alleviate those feelings in another person? All that stuff's really important for socialization, and you don't want to use that interface to bypass a reasonable or good teaching moment to just make somebody believe something without having to think very deeply about it. And it's not that children have to think super deeply about animal rights, but depending on your relationship with those, you want to be talking about them in a really good, coherent, clear, and honest sort of way from the get-go. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. I still like cartoons and anthropomorphic animals. I have no problem with them. It's just when you use them in the wrong way, that's my point. So